Good morning. It's Wednesday, November 2, 2022. Welcome to the banquet hall here at Jamaica House, the office of the Prime Minister, for our weekly post-cabinet media briefing. I'm Naomi Francis, the press secretary. Today we're pleased to be joined by the Minister without Portfolio in the office of the Prime Minister, the Honourable Robert Nesta Morgan, who will give you the cabinet decisions in brief. This morning we have to be a little clinical because we do have several other engagements, especially involving the Prime Minister here at the office of the Prime Minister. We welcome those from the media who are here to pose questions and certainly to get the latest cabinet notes. So without further ado, let me ask Minister Morgan to give us the notes. Minister.
Thank you very much, Naomi. And thanks to members of the media who are here. I see, we need to do a kind of membership of OPM, as I said last week. I see Kimon. I like the color of your shirt, Kimon. Morning to those online. Also to thank you to the team from Jamaica Information Service, as well as the team from the Office of the Prime Minister who are essential to making these proceedings successful. I just want to run through quickly some of the decisions of Cabinet, as well as some of the board appointments, some new board appointments that have been made. The first one is the approval of the medium-term socioeconomic policy framework 2021-2024 as the prioritized strategic framework for the medium to 2024, mistake there, would accelerate the achievement of goals and outcomes for Vision 2030 development agenda. There's also the establishment, there's also the award of a major contract to the Electronic Communication of Jamaica, from the Electronic Communication Commission of Jamaica to Fujitsu. I don't know, I'm having a rough morning this morning. From the Electronic Communications of Jamaica, Commission of Jamaica to Fujitsu Caribbean Jamaica Limited for a site storage era network and backup solutions. And this was valued at about $63 million. Want to announce the appointment of the board of directors of the Coconut Industry Board, Chairman Mr. Christopher Gentles, also the appointment to the board of directors of the National Fisheries Authority with retired Lieutenant Commander George Overton being the chairman, appointment of new board members to the Edna Manley College of the Visual and Performing Arts, and that chairman is Mr. Dwight Peters, OD. There's also been appointments to the Forestry Advisory Board with Ms. Sharon Donaldson being the chairperson, and appointments to the board, replacements to the board of the National Water Commission with the appointment of Professor Andrew Spence and Ms. Nicole Ebanks in place of Mr. Asa Harriott and Mr. Baron Stewart. Pleased to announce as well appointments to the Board of Directors for Devon House Development Company Limited, and that is now chaired by Mrs. Minion Wright, and also the directors of the Montego Bay Conference Center with Mr. Bertram Wright chairing, and the Tourism Development Company Limited with Mr. Ian Deere chairing as well. Those are the most recent cabinet decisions. And I will now take questions from members of the media. Naomi, you can govern that process.
Yes, thank you so much, Minister. I believe the award of the contract you were referring to that gave a little bit of a tongue twister, Minister, was the Electoral Commission of Jamaica, the ECJ,
yes,
to Fujitsu. You have to do it slowly.
Not the electrical,
Fujitsu. Yes.
The electoral.
All right. So
Right.
we'll then begin with questions. You know, the usual, our usual colleagues are here from the media. And so even before, we'll allow the lady to begin today. So Ms. Kimon Francis, here you go, ma'am.
Thanks, Naomi. Morning, Minister. Morning, colleagues. Minister, when was Cabinet informed about the deaths of 14 babies at VJH? And is the PM satisfied with how the matter was handled by the Minister? And will Minister Tufton be sanctioned for his failure to inform expectant mothers of the issue?
Thank you very much, Kimon. Cabinet was informed on Monday. When I say informed, meaning, let me start that over. Cabinet received a very detailed report from the Minister of Health on Monday. Prime Minister was informed previously. He was informed the Wednesday before as it relates to the issues that were at the Victoria Jubilee Hospital. I think I should contextualize to say that in listening to the report from the Minister, listening to all the facts that have come forward, the system worked. The fact is that in a public health facility that delivers about 6,000 babies per year, you will have incidents such as these where you have various bacteria that may occur from time to time, coupled with, as the Minister has said, there are challenges as it relates to staffing, there are challenges as it relates to the availability of critical care nurses and so on. So I think what is commendable about this situation is how the Ministry of Health and its staff managed the situation. If you compare it to previous, you would have seen an escalating of the incidents regarding babies not making it. What has happened here is that immediately as it was found out that there was a challenge, there was a cauterization. So in the first month, you had about 7, second month, you had about 2, then 1. So you saw a tapering off of the incidents. And I think that is something that the country should be proud of, that our healthcare workers and the administration of the hospital, led by the minister, were able to quickly deal with what was a very challenging situation. The other question is, are we satisfied with the minister's explanation? We are. We have very full confidence in Minister Tufton's ability to manage the portfolio. He has done a pretty exemplary job in very challenging times, coming through COVID. Also, he has been on a transformational push in terms of improving health facilities, many of which we have not really built a new hospital in Jamaica for decades. We now have Cornwall Regional being renovated, long-standing issues being solved. We now have the Western Children's Hospital, one of the most significant developments in healthcare, not just in Jamaica, but in the region. We have work that is about to begin at Spanish Town Hospital. We have the Chapelton Community Hospital in my constituency, which will be open in the first week of December. So we have to, as a cabinet, recognize the work of the minister and recognize the distinction between what happened previously with things like CHIKV, with things like the previous challenges with babies succumbing to Klebsiella, and what happened now. We have learned a lot of lessons from the mistakes of previous health ministers. The minister has been doing good stewardship, and he has full confidence of the government.
So Kimon has a follow-up, and then we'll give it to Arthur next.
Minister, has the lesson been learned? 14 babies died years later, and also mothers, these are mothers we're talking about who would have lost their babies. Will there be sanction? Will there be a sanction?
All right, let us first recognize that the government, as parents, I cannot understand or relate emotionally to a mother losing her child. I don't think anybody can explain how it feels, and I'm not going to attempt to do that. It's a very sad situation, and it is not necessarily, and you'd allow me to be a bit patient in trying to explain, because it's a very sensitive issue. These are the lives of families that have been impacted. There is mortality in hospitals. There is a rate of mortality, especially for a facility that delivers over 6,000 babies per year. That's a fact. Incidents like this will happen. That's a fact. What is important is the management of them. So yes, there is this conversation of should the minister have said it in January or should he have said it in February? But what is most important for us as a government is the management of the issue. Immediately, as there was a recognition, the administrators, the head of Victoria Jubilee, the nurses, the doctors worked really hard to solve the problem. And I think expectant mothers, postnatal mothers, I think can take some assurance as it relates to the quickness and the effectiveness of the management of incidents like this, which will happen in a healthcare system, especially one like ours that sometimes faces challenges in terms of staffing and resources and so on. Naomi?
All right, Arthur.
Minister, just a follow-up to Kimun's question. The health minister says he was off the island when it started and he was not informed till more than a month later. There's a junior minister in his ministry who I'm assuming was not off the island at the time. Is it acceptable that the minister was not aware of this outbreak for a month? Does the cabinet accept that?
I think you have to think about, does the minister hear of every single issue that takes place at every single hospital, at every single level? So in the government, you have different levels of responsibility. You have different levels of responsibility in the government. So at the local level in the hospital, you will have the matron, you will have the CEO, you have the SMO, and so on. Then it reaches the ministry level, the regional level. Not every issue rises to the level where the minister will be immediately advised about it. In this case, the minister had a team who we put in charge in the public service, whose job it is to manage these problems. And if it rises to a particular level, then that is where the minister, there's an alert. In this case, it was discovered in 1 month that there were the deaths of babies due to what is called Klebsiella. The protocol worked. They called in the Pan American Health Authority, and they assisted the government and assisted the health sector in fixing the problem. And the minister was informed after the initial discovery, right? As it relates to Junior Minister Cuthbert, junior ministers would be assigned particular tasks within a ministry. So for example, I am a minister without portfolio here at OPM. I may not know of all the things that the Prime Minister is doing, though I am his junior. So you wouldn't expect that Juliet Cuthbert will hear everything because she has her particular responsibility. She's responsible for, I think, HIV/AIDS. She is responsible for Jamaica Moves and wellness and so on. So I don't think it's a reasonable expectation that she would have been brought into all the conversations. Naomi?
Thank you, Minister. We have a newbie with us, and so I ask him to introduce himself and ask question.
Good morning, Minister. Halshane Burke,
Welcome,
RJ
Halshane.
Arglina.
Welcome, Alshin.
Thank you.
Used to be at Area FM.
That's correct. The question is, when are we going to hear the specificities of the measures that were taken to deal with the outbreak? I know that the Minister spoke about the PAHO investigation and the report coming out of that, but when will we hear all the details?
Well, I don't know if you were present or you were cognizant, but the Minister gave a very detailed statement to Parliament yesterday, coming out of his report to Cabinet, where he laid out the processes and procedures that went into the management of this issue. Laid out when he knew what, laid out when the government was advised, and laid out the actions of the Ministry of Health and Wellness in cauterizing the issue. So that was actually detailed. if there needs to be more, as I would say, a more microscopic ventilation of the issue, then I suspect that we would have to speak directly to either the Chief Medical Officer, the Permanent Secretary, or the Minister himself of Health and Wellness. Thanks, Hashane.
We have I'm sorry, Halshane, if you could, I'm sorry, I left that side. Let's do a quick follow-up here, come back over to you, all right?
Minister, just to follow up on your response to my colleague Arthur, I'm looking at a headline here that says Cuthbert Flynn commits to improving maternal health care. So one would imagine that that would fall under her responsibilities as a junior minister. So I don't imagine that you can then say she won't know everything when it's in her remit.
Well, I have not confirmed that it's in her remit. That's the headline. That's your extrapolation from a headline. What I will have to do, if, as you maintain that she's responsible for maternal health care, is ask the ministry if that is indeed so. My point stands. Even if she is in charge of maternal health care, doesn't mean that she would be off a, note I said even if, doesn't mean that she would be off a with everything that takes place at every maternal facility in the country. I want to reiterate again, in listening to Minister Tufton, in speaking to the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Health, the system worked. Understanding that there will be incidents such as these where difficult bacteria and other things will come about in facilities that have a very high rate of usage. There will be mortality in these facilities. What is important is when you find out, first, what steps do you do to prevent it from happening? And if it does happen, what do you do when you find out? Looking at the numbers, 7 in 1 month, 2 in another month, then tapering off to now 0. And when you compare that to the major previous incident that everybody remembers, you see a distinct difference in management and in outcomes. And I think that is something that we should focus on. Naomi?
Thank you, Minister. We do have a guest minister as well who will join us. The
Can you
Deputy
finish
Prime
the questions,
Minister,
please?
the Honorable Dr. Horace Chang is here. I believe, Mr. Burke, you had another question, was it? And then, of course, we'll speak with Dr. Chang.
All right, Minister, what assurance, mothers are out there, they're concerned. We have the viral infection that is also an issue that's out there. What assurance can the government give to expectant mothers that everything is being done to ensure that their babies will be safe?
The assurance is in the evidence. The assurance has to be in the evidence. I mean, anybody can get up and make a statement. But when you have incidents happening and you have evidence of an effective management of these issues, that's the best assurance you can give to persons who use these facilities. Let me give you another example. So there is currently a flu going around that is affecting young children. The ministry assessed the situation, and we realized that Bustamante Hospital for Children was overwhelmed. What did we as a government do? We activated the University Hospital of the West Indies, which is not a strictly public health facility. It is a facility that does charge, so it's not a part of the free access to healthcare regime. And we have created a situation now where any child below the age of 12 can access healthcare at the University Hospital of the West Indies without charge at the point of access. That is how you act as a government to demonstrate to the people who use these facilities that you're actually working in their stead and you're actually doing things for their benefit. I mean, Dr. Chang has a lot of experience with healthcare and babies and these sort of challenges. I'm sure he may want to comment on it because the reality of it is that, and we cannot be misled about it, the healthcare sector in Jamaica is a very challenging sector to manage. It's a sector where on a regular basis you have to be cauterizing issues related to staffing, issues related to equipment, issues related to aging plants, issues related to how is it that members of the public can access the help that they need as quickly as they need in an effective way. And I think if you look at the evidence, Shane, and you look at the management of the health sector over the last 6 years by this administration, and you compare it to previous management, you'll see a distinct difference. You'll see more professionalism, you see more effectiveness, you see better health outcomes for Jamaicans. And I think that is what gives the reassurance. Thank you very much. Dr. Chang, I suspect it's your turn. So Dr. Chang is here this morning. As you know, the new Firearms Act has come into place. And yesterday, Dr. Chang tabled a resolution in the House as it relates to what is proposed to be an amnesty, which will begin on Saturday after it goes to the Senate. So he's just here because we know that members of the public would be interested in the new Firearms Act legislation as well as the proposed amnesty that is supposed to be activated on Saturday. So we invited him this morning to give a presentation and answer your questions. Dr. Chang.
Thank you, Minister Morgan. Good morning. I'm very brief the opening comments and take the questions. The critical event yesterday was really the appointed day of notice, which meant that the new Firearms Act, Firearms Restriction, Prohibition, Restriction, and Regulation Firearms Act 2022, effective yesterday, that anybody charged with a breach of the new Firearms Act would be subject to the new penalties outlined in the new law. It was taken to the House and sent in September. It takes a little while to go through the process of being edited properly and make sure everything's correct, and then to the AG's department, back to GG, and back to the House for review and gazetted. So it was effective yesterday, the appointed day notice. As a result of the appointed day notice, which means the law is effective, that empowered me to provide room for an amnesty, which is what the order was done on the same day in the House yesterday. The Firearms Prohibition, Restriction, and Regulation Firearms Amnesty Order 2022, which is simply designed to allow the few individuals who may have a firearm, an unregistered or illegal firearm that may have no criminal intent, that they can hand this over to the police without fear of being prosecuted over a 14-day period starting the 5th of November. That's what we are offering, because the new penalties under the new act are severe and are designed to be a deterrence to the criminal actors. And we are fully aware that given the cross-section of opinion out there in society, we have to respond to all of them. We are a democracy, and it only takes one individual who may be apprehended with a firearm that you end up damaging the overall intent of the legislation. On that basis, we decided to provide a period of amnesty that I said those who might have an unregistered or illegal firearm with no criminal intent is able to hand it over to the police without being prosecuted. Bear in mind, this in no way impairs the police in their normal work. If a criminal is using a firearm in an armed robbery, he will be charged the same way as he will be charged tomorrow and the day after the amnesty. Okay? The Firearms Act 2022 was effective as of 12 a.m. on the 1st of November. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Chang. So just to reiterate, 12 a.m. on the 1st of November, the new firearms legislation came into force with some very strict penalties, stricter penalties than previously obtained, as well as yesterday's resolution empowering the minister to activate an amnesty, which is from Saturday of this week until the 19th, Dr. Chang? Until the 19th of November, which does not impede the police to function in their regular duties in dealing with criminal elements. We'll now open the floor again, Naomi, to any member of the media who wishes to ask any question, whether to Dr. Chang or to myself.
All right, thank you, Minister. Are there any questions from those gathered among us for either minister? I see a question coming. All right.
No, this is for Dr. Chang. I have additional questions for Minister.
Very happy that you're giving me a break.
Dr. Chang, yesterday I think the opposition leader had raised some concerns about a registry and providing receipt for persons who surrender firearms, whether illegal or ones that they have had tucked away. I don't know, I didn't get to finish. I don't know if you had addressed that. Just asking for a response. Mm-hmm.
It was constant. I said if you go to an attorney who wants some record to be kept, for those who may not have a licensed firearm, and bear in mind that the regime of accountability is different for the unregistered firearm, but it would pose a problem in the new law for them. They are take it to officer of the firearms licensing authority. For the guy on the road who might have just bought a firearm for him not getting a license, he's in a difficult area. Part of the interview for them just walking and handing it to the police. We're not using the amnesty to replace the police investigation. So we didn't see it as absolute necessary. Naturally, the police officer will, in fact, proceed to do so. It's a routine activity. If he gets something, he make a record of it, who brought it to him. But we have no problem with the man just walk in, hand it in, and, in fact, those who will do it, like to do that, are likely to use a lawyer. So the intention was never to try it, but we're seeking to track down by use of amnesty criminals. We just want them to get rid of any gun that's illegal out, because if he's caught with it after, well, from yesterday, without him taking it to a police station or to a lawyer, he will face 15 years or life imprisonment. So as a matter of equity and justice, we give him a chance to hand it in.
Dr. Chang, if I may, as a moderator, just zoom in on a couple of public sentiments and media commentary that has happened over the last 18 hours, especially since Parliament, concerning explaining really to the public the proper thinking of why do an amnesty and possibly give a financial reward for someone bringing in an illegal gun. And those were comments from,
yes,
from the
we
public, so if we could correct those.
And the thinking was we should do the amnesty at the beginning to give those, I said, who may have a firearm without criminal intent to hand it in. The important event yesterday was the appointed day notice. As of yesterday, anyone caught with an illegal firearm, or is caught, arrested for having used a firearm in an act of criminality, he's subject to a minimum 15 years to life imprisonment. That is the important element that's out there. That's what I'm concerned about. We are giving a few people, it's only a few, maybe 2 or 3, but one incident that someone who has a firearm that he inherited from his grandfather and put in a safe, and we catch him with it, the police lock him up and find he is subject to 15 years. Now, the law does allow some escape route, but it's going to cost him. He's going to have to go to a lawyer, where he has to get a good lawyer, go to court, and then seek to get either what is called a brief from the sentencing judge, to send him to the appeal court. So it's a severe punishment to him as well, and we're trying to avoid that. As happened incidentally, I said many years ago, most of you are maybe not even active yet in the field, when a gentleman was caught with an unlicensed firearm in the first Gun Court Act, and he was sentenced to 15 years for not licensing his firearm. All that has changed in the current regime we have outlined, and we have to embark on a public education program for those who have licensed firearms, as well as for those who may not understand the details of the prohibition section of the Act. Right? It is not, it's a very narrow band over a short time, and that's the intention. So it's not an act to see if we can identify some guys, some criminals who want to play a different role. It's simple designed to recover a few firearms that might be out there without criminal intent. When it goes in, we're still going to do the ballistics. Once we get in the police system, the government says we're going to do all that is required to have it in the registry. Eventually destroy them, as the law allows, but we're going to do the ballistics. And if it is identified as a firearm that was involved in criminal activity, we do the required investigation backwards. But the object of the amnesty is to give those who may have a firearm that can be considered a prohibited weapon a chance to hand it in without any prosecution. Nothing else.
Thank you, Minister. Are there any other questions for Minister Chang? And then, of course, Minister Morgan is still here fielding questions as well.
I suspect we have run out of questions. Thank you very much, Dr. Chang, for taking the time.
Minister.
Oh, sure.
Minister, does the government have any existing contracts with Amber Group? And if yes, are there any concerns in light of at least 2 data breach involving the company in the last 2 years, one being JPS?
I'm not aware of any existing contracts with the Amber Group, but I could be wrong, though I'm not aware of it. I think I would have to do a double check on that, but I'm not aware of any existing contracts.
All right.
You're going deep now. You're going deep.
No. A list would have been submitted to the Prime Minister for him to make a recommendation in terms of Cabinet Secretary.
Right.
Is that list not still viable? Can he not choose somebody else from that list? Or is it that a list was not provided?
Well, I can't really respond to that. I mean, the whole process of the selection of the Cabinet Secretary resides in the Public Services Commission and then to the Prime Minister. I have not gone behind that curtain to inquire in detail about those peculiarities that you have outlined, because there's an understanding in government that when it comes to matters that reside at the Public Services Commission, ministers really do not try to engage in those processes, as it could be a violation of certain conventions that exist. So I would not have been able, or would not have inquired about that. That's purely in the remit of the Public Services Commission. Thank you very much.
All right, Minister, I see no more questions,
Thank
no
you.
more hands. All right,
Thank you
we're
very much,
closed.
ladies and gentlemen, for coming to another post-cabinet press briefing. I want to thank Dr. Chang again, members of the media, also members of the GIS team, members of the Ministry of National Security team, OPM, PBCJ, and everyone who assisted in making it a success. You will receive notification for the next post-cabinet press briefing, which I suspect may be next week. So thank you again for coming by, and have a wonderful and safe day. Thank you.